As sea level rise, coastal erosion, stronger storm surges, and more frequent flooding become increasingly challenging to manage, coastal communities in the US and around the world are faced with making complex management and policy decisions. How can we as social science scholars and practitioners better support coastal communities in understanding, preparing for, and responding to these climate change impacts? My name is Jessica Brunicini. I'm the Margaret Davidson Graduate Fellow at the Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve, and I'm also a PhD candidate at Michigan State University. My work focuses on helping coastal communities think about and plan for sea level rise. Today, I want to talk with you about the power and potential of using photographs to explore the social dimensions of climate change with coastal communities who care for and are concerned about the future of coastal places. Before we dig into a method that I want to talk with you about today, which is Photovoice, let's make sure that we are on the same page about what we mean when we talk about social dimensions of climate change. So if we're considering social dimensions, we might look at the economic, the cultural, the legal aspects of the causes and consequences of climate change, just to name a few. So, for example, we could explore how land use policy, energy systems, and our beliefs, attitudes, and values affect our ability to respond to climate change. The social dimensions also include climate justice and equity concerns. For example, what is the historical context in which communities are experiencing climate impacts? What is the distribution of benefits and burdens in our response strategies? And who makes decisions about climate policy and planning? Social dimensions can be challenging to learn about and to address because they can be difficult to uncover or quantify, and in some cases, they can't be quantified. Luckily, there are innovative social science practices that can help us better understand these dynamics. Which brings me to Photovoice. Photovoice is a qualitative, participatory research method that's useful for exploring community knowledge, perceptions, values, and aspirations. It can be a particularly good approach for engaging and working with people whose voices and experiences are typically marginalized. According to Carolyn Wang and Marianne Burris, the two researchers who helped to develop the method, the goals of Photovoice include recording and reflecting on community strengths and weaknesses, facilitating critical dialogue about issues through group discussion and photographs, reaching policymakers, and promoting community change. The ultimate goal of Photovoice is to use the images and voices of the participants to inform decisions, strategies, and policymaking. But Photovoice isn't just a social science research method. It's an approach to community engagement that can be used for a variety of purposes, including problem identification, needs assessment, program evaluation, and policy change. Photovoice processes vary according to the goals of any given project, but generally speaking, there are 4 to 5 steps involved in the process. Once participants are recruited, training workshops take place to provide information on the purpose and the process of the method, including what the photographs and the narratives should explain, when the photo should be taken, and how they can be submitted. Participants are then asked to take photographs and to write short narrative statements in response to a specific research question or interest. Now, some Photovoice projects include one-on-one interviews, which can help to build relationships and rapport between the researcher and the participants. And it can also help to provide deeper context for the photos. However, this step is optional and can take place at different points in the process, which is why I've included the asterisks here. Once the photos and narratives have been submitted, participants then take part in a facilitated group discussion that involves engaging with one another's photos and narratives and identifying common themes, similar stories, and/or shared concerns. Finally, selected photos and narratives are displayed in public settings. These public displays, which can be in person, online, or a mix of the two, foster engagement with the broader public, including policymakers, who are always a target audience for Photovoice projects. Now, I want to briefly tell you about a Photovoice project that I have been working on with the coastal community members in the town of Wells, Maine. Wells is a special place within an abundance of sandy beaches and productive estuaries that have drawn people to live here both seasonally and year round for generations. But these are the same assets that make the town vulnerable to the effects of a changing climate, especially to sea level rise. With the Maine Climate Council projecting that the town of Wells will experience between 1.1 and 1.8 feet of sea level rise by 2050, I set out to learn more about how coastal residents are connected to place and why that matters for decision making. So, the academic language for connection to place is called place attachment, and it is concerned with the extent to which a person feels connected to the environment that surrounds them, including the social relationships and the networks that are embedded in those places. And as you can see here in this model, there are different elements of place attachment that shape our connection to coastal places. So for some people, place attachment is rooted in historical connections to a place. Maybe your family has lived in a specific place on the coast for many generations. For others, place attachment comes from the types of social activities that are connected to a certain location. Maybe the beach house is where you can gather regularly and spend quality time with your family and friends. And for some, place attachment is related to the types of thoughts or emotions that are experienced in these special places, and possibly because of the physical aspects of those places themselves. Maybe the shore is where you feel the happiest or the most at peace. But why does place attachment matter when we're talking about issues like coastal management, social resilience, or climate adaptation? As a social dimension of climate change, place attachment can be a powerful motivator or inhibitor of change. Connection to place shapes the way that we think about the past, the present, and the future of the places that are special to us. It's a sort of lens that informs things like how we understand and value a place, how we perceive risk, how we experience change, and how we decide what is important to protect for future generations. Also, when people have been connected to places over long periods of time, they have a lot of local knowledge, observations, and experiences that are really important to include in planning and decision-making processes. So I decided to employ the use of Photovoice to explore place attachment among seasonal and year-round residents in two waterfront communities in Wells, Drake's Island and Moody Beach. 12 people graciously accepted my invitation to participate and embarked with me on a journey of exploring the question, when it comes to this place, what do you care about most? I have included here some of the guidelines that I provided to participants about what I was looking for in their photographs, including what their photos could include and what their photos should include. As you can see here, I did not frame this as a climate change project, but not surprisingly, climate change issues and impacts emerged as a significant concern. So I am still in the early stages of analysis, but I wanted to highlight the voices of my participants by sharing some examples of their photos and their narratives. So here, if we think back to the place attachment framework, we can see that the physical and process-oriented dimensions are part of what make this photographer feel connected to their place. So the dynamic nature of the environment is what provides them with some type of psychological benefit. It's where they go to feel soothed or restored or rejuvenated. In this example, we get a sense that our connection to place helps us maintain our connection to loved ones, even when those loved ones are no longer with us. For this photographer, both community change and environmental change cause them to question what their connection to this place will be in the future. But again, we see the importance of family connections in maintaining our connection to these places. Here, we can see the photographer speaking to observations of change over time. which is informed by their long-term connection to place. This photographer also shares observations of dramatic change over time and does so by getting creative with their use of a historical image paired with a modern day photo. And finally, we have an example of how one person is taking preparedness into their own hands. So, these are just a handful of the remarkable images and stories that I've heard so far. One anecdote that I did want to share was that the process of photo voice seems to be one that is rewarding for both the facilitator and the photographers. My participants were, somewhat to my surprise, exceptionally grateful for the opportunity to participate in this project. And I feel lucky to be entrusted with stewarding their stories of what makes these coastal places special to them. So I look forward to sharing more with you as the project progresses and my analysis moves forward. And in the meantime, thank you so much for your time, and please feel free to reach out for more information and resources.